It is Tuesday, February 1st. Don't go running and doing your Valentine's shopping just yet because you are watching Right on Cue College Sports. Wow, what an incredible weekend of action. What a great slate of games we got to see over this past weekend. Let's just go ahead and get right into it. First, the first game on Saturday on ESPN, number 9 Duke traveled to Louisville. Keep in mind this was right after, remember, Chris Mack, the Louisville head coach, got fired. Duke pulls off the win in a game that was a lot closer than really any of us thought it was going to be, 74-65. This is the first time in 9 games that Paolo Banchero was not the leading scorer for Duke. The other freshman phenom forward, A.J. Griffin, had 22 points, looked pretty sensational in that game. Banchero just had 11 points, but he did have 15 rebounds, posting another big double-double for him. Duke had just 7 turnovers in this game. Very good ball control. I know that's something I talked about in the previous episode that they were going to need to shore up. They're averaging 10 a game coming in, and so to hold that to 7, pretty impressive. Duke out-rebounded Louisville by 13 in the game. Next up for Duke, they get Notre Dame, and then their rival, the last time Coach K will be coaching at the Smith Center at the University of North Carolina. Now the guard, Ellis, led the team for Louisville in scoring with 18, but the Cardinals played well, but they just, it was tough circumstances. They didn't have the guns, they didn't have the weapons to keep up. Next up for Louisville, North Carolina at home, and then they travel to Syracuse. I think I could see them dropping both of those. Syracuse a little more difficult on the road than North Carolina at home. Next, we had at 10 a.m. on ESPN2, number 19 LSU. This was kicking off the Big 12 SEC Challenge, which was incredible. Great weekend of action. But number 19 LSU Bayou Bengals rolled into Fort Worth to take on the TCU Horned Frogs. TCU got the win at home, 77-68. Man, this is a fun Horned Frog squad. I like following them. I think they're kind of flying under the radar a little bit because they're not getting a bunch of hype for being ranked, and I think they're really kind of a bubble team in most people's bracketology, but they're 14-4 on the year, and they have posted a couple of big wins. This one, obviously, another win over a ranked opponent. Man, when Mike Miles and Chuck O'Bannon get going, it's fun. This is a fun squad to watch. TCU last year went 12-14. They started off this season 12-2. I think that's a tremendous credit to their head coach, Jamie Dixon, the former Pittsburgh head coach. He's doing a great job there in Fort Worth, especially in the Big 12, which is clearly one of the toughest conferences in all of basketball. Really, there's kind of the top echelon is this year the SEC, and then somewhere beyond the SEC is kind of Big 10, Big 12. But like I said, so Miles and O'Bannon both got 19 points and played great defense late. LSU led the country in field goal percentage defense coming in, allowing only 35.7% per game, but TCU shot 49%, almost 15% higher than LSU's average. TCU shot the ball really, really well. Miles and O'Bannon were a big part of that. And the Tigers' defense did force 13 turnovers, though. But they shot just 37% on the offensive end. They missed too many bunnies. They missed too many easy shots you should get. Their sensational player, Tari Eason, had 16 points. Darius Days in the post had 14 and 12 to post another double-double for him. But the two of them just didn't get much help. Xavier Pinson played just 7 minutes coming off of an injury. He's their point guard that transferred from Missouri. Just not enough production out of LSU. And TCU gets the big win at home. So congratulations to TCU. Next, TCU is at Oklahoma, and then they get Kansas State at home. Both winnable games. I think you could see TCU march through this week with 2 wins and probably be looking at being in the top 25 come next week. LSU, on the other hand, gets Ole Miss at home and then at Vanderbilt. Same thing for them. 2 very winnable games. They probably should win. So, if you're LSU, the house isn't on fire. You ran into a good a really good defensive team in TCU, and they got hot on offense. So I would just count that as kind of a one-off. Get back to focusing on that tough slate in the SEC. At 10:30 on CBS, we had the big matchup between Michigan and Michigan State, number 10 in the country, and Michigan State just beat Michigan down. I was doubting on Sparty, and boy, was I wrong going into this one. No one on Michigan State's team scores more than 14 points, but they have great diversification of the production. In the first half, this was a battle. I thought it was going to be kind of the game I was expecting, a tight, close game. It was a slow-paced, physical game in the first half. And then after ending the half up just 4, 39-35, Michigan State went on a 14-3 run to start the second half with scoring from 4 different players. That's the diversification of scoring I'm talking about, and they just put it away. Michigan had no way to keep up with that kind of production, and they missed some easy shots, made some silly turnovers to start the second half, and Michigan State just put it away. State was up double digits the rest of the way. Joey Hauser had 14 points on 5 of 6 shooting. The freshman Max Christie, who's turned into a little bit of a reliable third option, he had 16 points on 5 of 8 shooting. And A.J. Hoggard had 11 off the bench. That was a good supplement for Michigan State. The team's leading rebounder, Marcus Bingham, pulled down 8. This is a guy who probably should be averaging around a double-double. There's really no reason why he shouldn't be getting double-digit rebounds. This was 8's good, but he should probably be pulling down more than that. Michigan State shot 55% from the field and 50% from three-point line. So Michigan State just was lights out on offense and played pretty good defense. Now keep in mind, Tom Izzo is now just 3 wins behind Bob Knight's Big Ten all-time wins record. Pretty cool. Rarefied air for Tom Izzo to be mentioned in there. On the flip side of the ball, the Michigan Wolverines' woes just continue. Hunter Dickinson scored 25 points, but he shot only 38%. Not terrible shooting, but he took a ton of shots just to get to 25 points. And like I've mentioned multiple times on this show, if you are the big man under the hoop, you should have a higher field goal percentage. You're closer. You can get physical, move them away, and dunk the ball. Musa Diabate and Caleb Houston both had 11 points, but the Wolverines shot just 37% as a team, and this was really kind of the key. I mentioned Michigan State shot 50% from three-point range. How did the Wolverines do? 16% from behind the line. Michigan doesn't have really any threat from the three-point line, and they needed it when Michigan State got out and running in the second half. Eli Brooks and Devontae Jones were just flat-out non-factors in this game. And most shockingly, Sparty out-rebounded the Wolverines. That should not happen. Sparty out-rebounded the Wolverines by 6 on the defensive glass. So, Hunter Dickinson, you got Musa Diabate. I mean, you have the bigger dudes under the hoop if you're Michigan, and you're getting out-rebounded. Plus, your head coach is Juwan Howard. He made a career in the NBA hitting the defensive and offensive glass. He was never a go-to scorer. He was a glass monster. He ate up rebounds. How is it possible that they got out-rebounded by Michigan State? I think it's just effort. I think that's what it comes down to. The Wolverines, like I mentioned last week, will end the season playing a ranked team every other game for the rest of the way. Not looking good for Michigan. Joe Lunardi has the Wolverines out of the tournament officially now, and Michigan State, their next 2 games, at Maryland and at Rutgers, both are on the road. Road Big Ten games are tough, but those are both really easily winnable games for Michigan State. One to keep your eye on, maybe Rutgers. I think, if I remember correctly, I think Rutgers knocked off it was either Purdue or Wisconsin at home. So Rutgers can be tough. Maryland, fired their head coach, or their head coach left, whatever they're choosing to describe that as, and it's been really kind of up and down and a lot of uncertainty with Maryland. They should beat Maryland pretty handily. But anyways, moving on to the next game at noon on ESPN, we had the Oklahoma Sooners. Obviously, Lon Kruger leaves. In comes Porter Moser from Loyola Chicago, and they went to the jungle to take on my favorite team this year, the number 1 Auburn Tigers, and Bruce Pearl, 20-1 on the season. Auburn beat the brakes off of Oklahoma, 86-68, just purely got outclassed. After Jabari Smith won the tip, Zep Jasper lobbed the ball to to Walker Kessler. He dunked it. This was right out of the gate. Smith wins the tip, lob, Kessler slams it for a dunk. The route was on. The Tigers' offense was explosive, but their defense was most impressive, I think. In the first half, Oklahoma shot just 34%. In the first half, they missed 6 layups. Tanner Groves started the game 0 for 5 from the field. Tanner Groves is their big man, kind of go-to point getter. Started the game off terribly. The Tigers only gave up 27 points in the first half, and they were up 12 at halftime. Auburn then in the second half, Auburn shot 50% from the field. Walker Kessler finished the game with 21 points, 9 rebounds, 4 blocks. Remember, he leads the country in blocked shots. Kind of a quiet day for the guards. K.D. Johnson did have 13 points, though. And Jabari Smith, this dude, I'm telling you, is going to go number 1 overall in the NBA draft. He had 23 points, 12 rebounds. That's his 4th double-double on the year. The Sooners shot 27 three-pointers. I've talked about this with the Buffaloes. I mean, when your team is jacking them up like that, unless it's intentional and strategy like Alabama does, which is also very dangerous, if you're shooting three-pointers like that, you're going to lose more games than you win. I mean, it's just not efficient. The metrics on that just don't add up. And the Sooners were out-rebounded by 12 on the game. So the game was never close, and Auburn is looking elite coming down the stretch here. Oklahoma has now lost 5 games in a row. Their next game, TCU, I just mentioned, TCU's pretty good team. They'll probably get the win. That is at Oklahoma, though. Then they travel to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State beat Baylor, a couple of good teams this year. And then they face 5 ranked teams in a row. I think, like I mentioned with Michigan, you're about to see the wheels kind of fall off the cart here for Oklahoma as they come down this murderer's row stretch. Auburn, on the other hand, has now won 17 games in a row. Next, they get the rematch with their rival Alabama, and then after that, they only face one more ranked team all season. So I think you could see Auburn finish the season with just 1 loss and be on the 1 line regardless of what happens in their conference tournament. Next at 2 p.m. on ESPN, we saw number 4 Baylor roll into Tuscaloosa in a game. I told you. Do not discount Alabama. They are a good team, but high variance, like I talked about. And sure enough, Alabama knocked off Baylor. This one, it was 87-78 was the final. It really was not. It was in hand for Alabama pretty much the whole way. Baylor would creep it down to like 6 points, and then Alabama would pull away to 12, 6-12, 6-12. So Alabama had the lead pretty much the whole way. Alabama has now beaten 3 of the 4 Final Four teams from last year, which is incredible. But then you say, well, why is Alabama not ranked? Well, they've also this year lost to Iona, to Missouri, to Mississippi State, and to Georgia. That was Georgia's first conference win in over a calendar year. So this Alabama, this is the variance I talked to you about. Okay, with all the three-point shooting, you can get way up. If you're making most of them, you can beat almost anybody in the country. But if you're not making most of them, you can lose to almost anybody in the country. This game was wild, up and down. 40 three-pointers were taken in this game, 21 turnovers, 40 personal fouls, just physical, wide open, both teams pushing the pace. But here was the key, I think. Both teams on the season shoot 45% from the field. Baylor shot 46%, which is 1% higher than their average. Alabama shot 60% from the field. A lot of those shots coming from the three-point line. The Tide also had 16 assists. That's good facilitation. The guard play in this, I mean, this was a matchup of potentially the 2 best backcourts in all of college basketball. You know, between Jahan Quinterly, Jaden Shackelford on the one end, and then on the other side, I'm not a huge James Akinjo fan, but I would say Adam Flagler and LJ Cryer for Baylor, I think, are outstanding guards. But Jahan Quinterly and Jaden Shackelford were masterful. Quinterly had 20 points, 5 assists, 2 rebounds, and Shackelford had 19 points, 5 assists, and 6 rebounds. Good production out of those two. LJ Cryer didn't play in this game, however, for Baylor, but Jeremy Sochan was back. Sochan, the freshman, had 17 points and 8 rebounds. Adam Flagler played well, 16 points, but like I said, I mean, James Akinjo almost had as many turnovers as points. Akinjo is a disaster. I don't understand. He has never really meshed with this team. He's the transfer that came from Arizona. So, you know, he's averaging almost 4 turnovers per game on the season. Really poor play, not valuing the possession of the ball. Now Baylor gets a wounded West Virginia next, and then they go to Kansas on Saturday. Baylor needs to get some things cleaned up. The Crimson Tide play Auburn next, and then they host Kentucky. That, you would talk about a murderer's row. That is a yikes right there. Then a game that was supposed to be at 2:30 p.m. on Saturday. This game was moved from Saturday to Sunday due to the winter storms that happened in the Northeast. You had number 22 Marquette rolling into number 17 Providence. Providence gets the win in a close, just clash of titans, physical matchup, 65-63. What a freaking battle. These two teams are tournament tough. There's no question about it. Shaka Smart it's a revelation what he has done with this Marquette program. The matchup between Nate Watson and Justin Lewis was epic. Watson had 17 points and 8 rebounds, while Lewis ended up with 13 points and 6 rebounds. Daryl Morcell, the Marquette guard who transferred from Maryland, had 14 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, and 6 steals on the game. He just flat out would not give up. He's one of those guys, like I talk about the motor that K.D. Johnson has at Auburn. He's one of those guys, Daryl Morcell, the motor. He is tracking down every loose ball. He is fighting for every square inch on that court. For Providence, Justin Minaya, averaging 6.5 points on the year, ended up more than doubling his normal production, 14 points. He also got 6 big rebounds for the Providence Friars. Marquette finished the game with 3 missed shots, and Lewis missing the front end of a 1-and-1. That's the kind of stuff you need to clean up as you go into the tournament, because that's going to lose you. That's the kind of streak that will get you to lose to an inferior opponent in the first round of the NCAA tournament. It happens every year. 5 or 6 teams that are, a 3, 4, 5, or 6 seed will fall to their converse 11, 12, 13, or 14 seed. So, Lewis missed the front end of the 1-and-1. The Friars found a way to win, but they shot just 68% from the free throw line. That's another thing to keep your eye on, like I was just mentioning, as both these teams will be definitely going to the NCAA tournament. I could personally see both of these teams in the Sweet 16 if they can clean up these little issues down the stretch of the game. Providence next they're at St. John's and then at Georgetown. St. John's is mediocre. Georgetown is terrible. Patrick Ewing may be losing his job at the end of this year. They are really a bad team. Now, you might remember they made the NCAA tournament last year, but that was a complete shock. They had, if I recall correctly, I think they had a losing record. They had to win the Big East tournament in order to make the NCAA tournament. So really, it's 2 poor years in a row for Patrick Ewing. Marquette next gets number 12 Villanova at home. Keep in mind, Marquette beat Villanova on the road a couple of weeks ago. And then Marquette is at number 17 UConn. Those are both going to be fun matchups. That is a tough stretch for Marquette. In Lenardi's latest bracketology, he has Marquette on the 5 seed line and Providence as a 4 seed. I was really pretty impressed with Providence. I think Providence deserves to be a 3 at this point. I mean, they only have, 2 losses on the year? Yeah, 18-2. I mean, that's some disrespect right there from Lenardi. But at 4 p.m. on ESPN, number 12 Kentucky rolled into Fog Allen to take on number 5 Kansas. This was the clash of titans. This was the juggernaut battle. These are the 2 programs that they're probably top 5 in the history of college basketball in wins. Both of them mini NCAA tournament championships, mini Naismith Player of the Years. James Naismith, wow, what an incredible performance by the Cats. Just flat out. The Kentucky Wildcats and John Calipari. This team is now a legit Final Four contender. Kentucky is legit. I think there's 3 teams at this point that I can say confidently are of the caliber to make the Final Four, and that is Auburn, Gonzaga, and now Kentucky. Because we're seeing some other issues from teams like UCLA, Arizona, Baylor. These teams are kind of stumbling. Kansas obviously got crushed in this game. The final was Kentucky 80, Kansas 62. So Kentucky put together 2 runs in the first half. One was an 11-2 run from about 14-18 to about 10:30 left in the half. And then they put together a 19-9 run from about 7:50 to 2:36 left in the half. It was done from there. They had Kansas in their rearview mirror, and they never looked back. The Wildcats were up 20 points at the half in Fog Allen. The battle of the bigs that I was looking forward to with Oscar Tshiebwe and Big David McCormack was completely one-sided. Oscar Tshiebwe had 17 points, 14 rebounds, and 4 steals. David McCormack, 3 points, just 1 rebound. Completely one-sided. Oscar Tshiebwe is your Naismith Player of the Year, in my opinion. Ochai Agbaji had his 3rd fewest points of the season, only 13. This is a player, Ochai Agbaji, who was leading the Big 12 in scoring, pretty much has been all season long. Agbaji and Christian Brown combined for 36% from the field. Every starting player for Kansas had at least 2 turnovers. I mean, that is not a good sign. This was the Jayhawks' 2nd biggest loss in the 19 years under Bill Self. Ty Washington, the freshman phenom from Kentucky, was kind of a non-factor in this game, but he and Shavir Wheeler combined for 13 assists. Great facilitation. This Kentucky ball club is very, very elite. Kansas kind of made a decision when they made those stretches in the first half, those runs. Kansas kind of made the decision that they were going to have Keon Brooks try and score on them and try and beat them. And Keon Brooks just shot. He just shot, and he's a shot maker. He's averaging 10 points on the season coming in. He scored 27 points in this game, 9 of 10 from the free throw line. He had 8 rebounds as well. Keon Brooks, welcome to the big time, buddy. That is a hell of a performance. And Kentucky matched their nation's leading rebound margin, obviously largely in part to Oscar Tshiebwe, plus 12 on the year and in the game. The Wildcats are an absolute contender, like I said, for the Final Four. Next, the Wildcats get Vanderbilt, and then they're at Alabama next Saturday. So they should roll Vanderbilt, and then at Alabama, we just saw Baylor lose at Alabama. So that's going to be a heck of a showdown. For Kansas next, they get 3 ranked opponents in a row. A bit of a tough stretch here for the Jayhawks at number 20 Iowa State. Then they host number 6 Baylor and then travel to number 23 Texas. Keep in mind, Iowa State and Texas, although they don't have exponential scoring, they have some of the best defenses in the country. Texas is number 1 in the country in defensive scoring. They hold their opponents to like just 55 points a game. Meanwhile, Baylor's going to want to get up and down. So there's a number of different styles of basketball that Kansas is going to be facing here coming up. That's a tough stretch. At 4 p.m. on ESPN2 on Saturday, we had Mississippi State traveling to number 13 Texas Tech as we kept on with the Big 12 SEC Challenge. And man, Texas Tech is looking damn good. They won this game 76-50. It was just a complete dominant performance. Tech held Mississippi State to 50 points. Wow. Mississippi State was averaging 75 points per game coming in. So that's a hell of a defensive performance right there. This Tech defense is just elite. They forced 22 turnovers in the game, blocked 4 shots. Iverson Molinar from Mississippi State, he's the Bulldogs guard. He was scoring 28 points per game in their last 5, and Texas Tech held him to just 12 points and forced him into 5 turnovers. Just suffocating defense out of Texas Tech. On the other side of the ball, the Red Raiders amassed 20 assists while shooting 62% from the field. That's a winning combination right there. Adonis Arms, welcome to the big time, just like I said about Keon Ellis. 16 points, 2 steals, 7 assists for Arms. The big offseason pickup for Texas Tech was Kevin O'Banner, who came over from Oral Roberts. He just continues to pay dividends. O'Banner had 13 points, 6 rebounds on 60% shooting. Great contribution out of Kevin O'Banner. Even though Tech has 5 losses on the year, their net ranking is number 12. This is a very, very good team. They had a few hiccups early on, but they are just tightening up and looking like they may very well be the best team in the Big 12. I mean, we'll see what Kansas and Baylor do, but Texas Tech may very well be the best team in the Big 12. Big time matchup tomorrow. Texas Tech travels to Texas. So that's going to be a fun big-time matchup. Keep in mind, Texas head coach Chris Beard bailed on Texas Tech in the offseason to come over and coach in Austin. There may be some hurt feelings going into that one. Mississippi State next gets South Carolina, which they should win. Then they're at Arkansas, which is actually a pretty tough one. Arkansas is scrapping and fighting to try and get back into the tournament hunt. And then Mississippi State gets 3 ranked SEC opponents in a row. I think Mississippi State is a team you're going to see kind of tailspin down the stretch here. At 6 p.m. on ESPN, we saw just another fantastic game. Number 18 Tennessee rolled into Austin to take on the aforementioned Longhorns of Chris Beard, and Texas got the win in a incredible display of defense on both sides from both teams, 52-51. Like I said, this was just another great game. Like I told you coming into this one, though, great defense and subpar offense. Okay, Tennessee shot 35% from the field, while Texas took only 37 shots in the game. That's fewer than one shot per minute. Texas, I think, is kind of settling into a certain style of basketball. Timmy Allen has not been scoring a lot of points. Marcus Carr has not been scoring a lot of points. And so I think they're just kind of deciding we are going to just hold the ball, make the game as short as possible, and let our just unbelievable, exceptional defense win the game for us. And it worked out in this one. The Longhorns' defense was elite again, leading the nation in defensive points per game. I was just mentioning earlier, they're giving up only 54.7 points per game. They held Tennessee to just 51 in this one. Courtney Ramey was really the only bucket getter in this game for the Longhorns. He had 18 points on 6 of 10 shooting. Like I mentioned, Timmy Allen and Andrew Jones had just real quiet games. They played great defense, but they combined for 11 rebounds and 18 points. That's pretty pedestrian. Marcus Carr, like I mentioned, was a complete non-factor. Texas came in averaging 12 turnovers per game. They had 18 in this one. Texas shot just 42% from the free throw line. Those are two metrics to look at. Yes, they have great defense, but they're really bad from the free throw line, and they're not valuing possession of the ball. A lot of turnovers. This was Tennessee's first loss to an unranked opponent all year. So when you look on the other side of the ball at Tennessee, Texas took junior point guard Santiago Vescovi completely out of the game, getting him in foul trouble early. Kennedy Chandler, their other major weapon, had just 8 points on 4 of 11 shooting. The only real bright spot for Rick Barnes' squad was Nakamoa. He had 9 points and 8 rebounds, just missing out on a double-double. These teams are both great defensively, like I said, but entirely stagnant on offense. Texas is number 17 in the net rankings, while Tennessee is 13. So the net rankings really value both of these teams, but from what I watched, they have poor offense. They don't execute well. Because of their defenses, these are both probably second weekend teams, but you gotta get some scoring going if you're going to compete with the better teams in the country. Texas gets 4 ranked teams in a row next, starting, like I mentioned, at Chris Beard's old team, Texas Tech. Then on Sunday, we had at 10 a.m. kicking off a couple of back-to-back big-time Big Ten games. Number 16, Ohio State, traveled to number 6, Purdue, in a game that was just another phenomenal back-and-forth game, down at least late in the game. Okay, down the stretch, it was back and forth. It looked like it was going to be a blowout early on. But I said this would be a fun one with 3 of the top candidates for Big Ten Player of the Year on display, and it did not disappoint. Purdue up 9 at halftime. They then grew the lead to 20 points in the second half behind Zach Edey, the big 7'4" center. 20 points, 14 of which were in that early part of the second half. But from that point forward, Ohio State then mounted a comeback. E.J. Liddell made some big buckets down the stretch, and the freshman guard Malachi Branham flashed onto the scene. He was only scoring 10 points per game on the season. He dropped 20 in this one and collected 7 rebounds. Again, that's now the third player I'm saying, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, young man. Okay, the Buckeyes defended Trevion Williams well in the paint. They kind of eliminated him as a threat. Coming in, he was a real contender for the Big Ten Player of the Year. In the last 35 seconds, E.J. Liddell made 2 3-pointers as we were coming down the stretch of the game. The second one tied the game with just 26 seconds left. Purdue called timeout. Matt Painter talking to the boys. You know where the ball was going. We all knew where the ball was going. The Buckeyes knew where the ball was going. They defended it well, but obviously it went right into Jaden Ivey. They defended him well, pushed him out beyond the 3-point line. He threw up a fadeaway prayer as the clock was running out, and buckets. And so that is the difference in our game here. 81-78 on a prayer, just a complete prayer from Jaden Ivey. Bummer for Ohio State to lose that way. But Jaden Ivey finished with 21 points in the win. E.J. Liddell finished with 20 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks. Kind of a light rebound day for Liddell. These two are very, very good teams. Purdue is another team that struggled from the free throw line, though. Okay, they shot just 57%. That's kind of what helped aid and assist Ohio State making this comeback in the second half. Lenardi's bracketology has Purdue now back up to a 1 seed. Meanwhile, Ohio State is at the 5 line. The Buckeyes play 6 unranked teams now in a row, and Purdue gets number 18 Illinois at home next Tuesday. Keep your eye on that one. Upset alert. Upset alert. Illinois traveling to Purdue. Buckeyes should probably roll off a number of wins here and maybe march their way up to a 3 line come the Big Ten tournament. And then we had at 11 a.m. on the Big Ten Network, Minnesota, just a complete surprise team this year, at number 11 Wisconsin. Wisconsin 17-3 on the year. Wisconsin jumped out to a 7-point lead at halftime. They were pretty much leading throughout as Jamison Battle, the kind of the star scorer for Minnesota, shot just 2 of 18 in the post. However, the Gophers, like Ohio State, made a furious comeback in the second half as Battle and the senior guard Peyton Willis combined for 22 points, and E.J. Stevens poured in another 11 of his own. The scoring, after scoring just 25 points in the first half, Minnesota put together 35 points in the second half. The defense was clearly focused on taking Johnny Davis out of the game in the second half. They did hold him to just 16 points, 6 below his season average, and 16 and 15 is pretty damn impressive, though, for Johnny Davis. That was his stat line, 16 points, 15 rebounds. He continues to be a Big Ten Player of the Year candidate and maybe even front runner. But the supporting cast was big for the Badgers. Tyler Wall had 15 points. Brad Davison, who is a real second weapon on this team, he added 14. And the sophomore forward Stephen Krall dropped in 11. The Badgers were just too tough and fundamentally sound late in this game. They closed out Minnesota like a veteran squad should. And so they're playing basketball beyond their years. Johnny Davis, obviously just a sophomore. Lenardi's latest bracketology has 7 teams from the Big 12, Big East, SEC, and Big 10 getting into the tournament. One of those from the Big 10 is Wisconsin on the 3 line. Lenardi does not have Minnesota in the tournament, though. And things are only going to get tougher for Minnesota as they move on through the Big 10. So let's go ahead and take a little recap here of the games that we watched over the weekend and how I fared. So I gave you Duke over Louisville. That one paid off. I gave you TCU at home in an upset over LSU. That one paid off. Then this one was just a complete blunder on my part. I had Michigan on the road at Michigan State, and they just got throttled by Tom Izzo's squad. I gave you Auburn at home in the jungle. They got that win. I gave you Xavier on the road at Creighton. They got the win. Then a couple of games, 3 games now in a row that I completely boofed. I did tell you that Baylor-Alabama game was going to be much closer than people thought. But I gave you Baylor by a couple. Alabama got the win. Then I gave you Marquette on the road at Providence. They did not win. The Friars pulled that one out. And then I gave you Kansas at home in a game that it just never happens in the history of basketball that Kansas loses like that at Fog Allen. Kentucky, I think, is a top 3 or 4 team in the country. They got the win over Kansas. Then I bounced back with a couple of good picks here. I gave you Texas Tech at home over Mississippi State. That one paid off. And I gave you Houston on the road over UCF. That one paid off. Then I picked Tennessee on the road, and they lost that just close, grind them out defensive battle by 1 point to Texas. On Sunday, though, I went 2 for 2. I gave you Purdue at home over Ohio State. They, like I just mentioned, won that one on the miracle shot by Jaden Ivey. And then I gave you Wisconsin at home over Minnesota. So on the weekend, I was, let's see if we can figure this out. On the weekend, I was 13-5. So that's pretty good. Pretty good for the weekend. Tonight, get your popcorn ready. Crack some cold ones. Tonight, number 11 Wisconsin at number 18 Illinois at 7 p.m. on the Big Ten Network. I told you, upset alert for Wisconsin here. Okay. Then also tonight at 8 p.m. on FS1, number 12 Villanova traveling to Marquette. Keep in mind, Marquette beat Villanova on the road just a couple of weeks ago. So I would go with Marquette in this game. Tomorrow, the juggernaut matchup in the Pac-12, UCLA at number 7 Arizona. UCLA just shut them down on defense when Arizona went to LA. So it'll be interesting to see if Arizona can fight back, or is this clearly a conference in the Pac-12 that is UCLA and then everyone else. So with all that being said, thanks so much for joining us. A lot of fun we had this weekend watching college basketball, and we will get at you next time. I'm Tyson Quiller. You've been watching Right on Cue College Sports.